Today is Wednesday, January 21st, the 242nd episode of Shea Station. It is a solo pod today, but it's an important one. The Mets have made yet another move. They have acquired Luis Robert Jr. from the Chicago White Sox in exchange for Luisangel Acuna and another pitching prospect. I'm your host today, Jolly Olive, and I am very excited about this news. Now, this has been a rumor that the Mets have been linked to for quite a long time at this point, most notably at the 2025 trade deadline when it did not come to fruition. Instead, it happens in the 2025 offseason, and the Mets add another bat to their lineup. Now, there is a ton to unpack with this move. So before we get into it, make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, and leave us a rating on Spotify if you thought we did a good job here today. So, surface level, Luis Robert is a name that you know as one of the more interesting center fielders in the game. He came up with those Chicago White Sox teams that were extremely exciting. Honestly, I look back on those teams, and if I were to not have a baseball team that I was a fan of at the time, I probably would have latched myself onto the 2021 White Sox. They were just extremely exciting across the board, and it felt like they were going to take over the AL Central for years and years and years. And a big piece of that was Luis Robert Jr., who in 2021 put up the best season of his career. He hit .338 with a 946 OPS and a 154 OPS plus, albeit in just 68 games, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But he was a big piece of that team. He played premier center field defense. He was a threat on the base paths, had the power tool, and was a key cog in that lineup. And I thought, really, you were going to see the ascension of one of the better players in the game going forward at that time. He was even hailed as Cuban Mike Trout, which at the time didn't seem like a crazy comparison to throw out there. It's just that the years since have paled in comparison. I want to talk about his 2023 season as well, which is easily the best full season of his career. It felt like the logical next step from that 2021 campaign. Luis Robert, 38 home runs, 20 stolen bases, a 130 OPS plus, premier center field defense, 5 WAR, Silver Slugger, All-Star, MVP votes. This was only 2 years ago at this point, which feels hard to remember. But as we know, the White Sox went into tailspin soon after that 2021 season, and they've been sort of, a mockery of that team ever since. And really, Robert was the only guy left in the clubhouse from that 2021 team. Yoan Moncada was out the door. Jose Abreu left for the Houston Astros. A flurry of other players. Andrew Vaughn got traded last year as well. Like, there was no real remnants from that team remaining. You can talk about the pitching staff with Dylan Cease, Lance Lynn, all those guys as well. Giolito is another one. But Robert, for 6 years, has been a White Sox, and he's been a part of the very high highs and the extremely low lows, including, setting the new record for the worst record of any team in Major League history. So he's seen it all, and whether you want to, conflate his decline with the team's decline, I'll let you be the judge of that. But numbers are numbers, and that's what we have to evaluate. And in the last 2 years, the performance has not been nearly as good. Last 2 years combined, an 85 OPS plus, 223 batting average, 288 on base. The power tool has gone way down, a 372 slug, and only 2.8 WAR in 210 games. The power tool kind of there, 14 home runs in each of the last 2 seasons, and he's definitely still stealing bases, 50 stolen bases in the last 2 seasons. So what to make of all of that? Because I just threw a ton of numbers at you to try and hopefully illustrate what Luis Robert has done in his career so far. I think there's a couple things we can clearly outline about the player that the Mets just acquired. His ceiling is extremely high, and his ceiling that he achieved was not that long ago, 2 years ago at this point. At the absolute best case scenario, and I personally don't think this is going to happen, but I also think the Mets don't need this to happen. But at the absolute best case scenario, you're getting a center fielder who can easily play the position amongst the best in the game. We're talking top 10, even top 5 defense in center field, which could be an upgrade over Tyrone Taylor, mind you. You're talking about a player that'll hit you 30 home runs out of, potentially the 7 hole in this lineup. You're talking about a player that is almost guaranteed to steal you 20 bases. He stole 33 last year, 23 the year before, and 20 the year before that. You're adding all of that to your lineup in place of Tyrone Taylor, who I like a lot, but is really a 4th outfielder. He's not a starting center fielder in a lineup that's trying to compete to win a division and a World Series. So, if nothing else, the Mets have achieved a player with another high ceiling. At its worst, and the absolute worst, we might only see Luis Robert play half the season. He's been extremely injury prone in his career. He has only one season in his career where he's played more than 110 games, and that was in that great 2023 season. He's played 110 last year, 100 the year before, 145 the year before that, and then never more than 100 in any of the prior 3 seasons, though one of those was 2020. So there's obvious injury concern there. Tyrone Taylor now acts as the safety net behind him, so the Mets at least have a center fielder to play if Robert goes down. Now, I think a lot of the commentary and criticism coming from Mets fans right now is that the Mets took on all the money in this deal. They're paying Luis Robert $20 million for what is essentially a big experiment out in center field. To contend that, I'll say, one, money is not really an object for the Mets right now. They had a ton of money come off the payroll when they let guys like Alonso, Nimmo, and McNeil go. And at the same time, the Mets make a habit of going over that third luxury tax threshold, a tax that was coined as the Cohen tax. I see no reason to not do it again this year when they're trying to compete year in and year out, and there might be a very intense CBA negotiation looming. Now, I do think that if the Mets went out and got Kyle Tucker, this is a move they still would have made. Like, if they had won the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes, that is a corner outfielder. They still would have needed to address center field. It just might have pushed Carson Benj out of a potential opening day spot, which he currently has right now. So, all in all, I'm a fan of this move. I don't really see the risk, if I'm being honest, because the second year attached is a club option, so the Mets maintain control of the financial future of Luis Robert there. If he has a great year, great. He's worth more than $20 million at his peak. And if he has a bad year or he's hurt a lot, then you cut bait and you pivot from there, and the Mets have guys in their system that they like, that they think that they can play center field defense. So I really don't see a risk in this move. The point of frustration for me is that I really wish the Mets got this done in the middle of the 2025 season. Now, I have to imagine that the price tag for Robert was probably different at the trade deadline. The White Sox were pushing hard for the trade, but they were also shopping him heavily with the expectation that they were going to get something substantial in return. That trade ended up not coming to fruition. We heard rumors that Mark Vientos was the demand in that trade. Jonah Tong was linked to that trade as well, and I think the Mets were wise to never push in their chips that far, but the player they did end up giving up, I personally am perfectly fine with. And that player is Luisangel Acuna, who we should now talk about a little bit. Luisangel Acuna came here in the Max Scherzer trade in 2023, came up big at the end of the 2024 season. Like, there's a world where the Mets don't even make the playoffs in 2024 if Luisangel Acuna doesn't step up and play shortstop when Lindor goes down in September and hit the way that he did. I think everyone was very surprised by that, including me, and it was very exciting at the time to see the potential of what Luisangel Acuna, excuse me. That being said, last year was a massive letdown and kind of a warning sign of things to come with Luisangel Acuna, and that his bat just might not be major league capable. I mean, you look at his 2 seasons, 2025 is a much larger sample size, 192 plate appearances compared to 40, but the offensive decline is massive. All 3 numbers in his triple slash line were below 300. That includes the slugging clip. Wasn't drawing walks, did not hit a single home run last year. But every year we see those winter league highlights and we get excited again. And you know what? I'm a culprit of that as well. Luisangel Acuna is a very exciting player. I love players that are just small in stature and still compete with the big guys. Luisangel Acuna sitting at 5'8". But the fact of the matter is that the Mets brought in Jorge Polanco. They brought in Bo Bichette. They brought in Marcus Semien. They have Brett Beatty. They have Mark Vientos. There's a ton of infielders on this team. That's not even mentioning Ronnie Mauricio and guys in AAA as well. Someone was going to have to go. In my mind, I thought it might have been Mark Vientos, but I think the Mets very clearly believe in his power tool still. There's going to be DH opportunities for him. I think he's on the team now. I don't think Ronnie Mauricio had much value at all coming off a torn ACL and then not really performing last year. So the guy that logically makes sense here is Luisangel Acuna if you could find a taker. He has years and years and years of control. He's a very fast player. He's got a very short-handed glove at all 3 major infield positions. So he brings that value, and if you can tap into the bat, you've got something there. I think the Mets believe they couldn't tap into the bat, so they shopped him, and I really like this trade because I'm not saying that I don't think Luisangel Acuna can be a major league player. I think he can, and especially if he's going to get everyday playing time over in Chicago. But the Mets had 6 or 7 infielders in this lineup or on this opening day roster. Someone had to go. We needed outfielders. We still need another outfielder in addition to Luis Robert. So even from just pure roster construction, it makes sense. And it's very clear that the White Sox did not want to pay $20 million to Luis Robert and were willing to take pretty much any trade they could get to get him off the books. So happy for Luisangel Acuna Jr. that he'll go get to play somewhere and prove his value. And the Mets did pretty well for themselves in this Scherzer trade. They sold half a season of Scherzer, and the Rangers won the World Series with Scherzer, so they did well as well. They got Luisangel Acuna, who might have saved the end of the 2024 season for them, and now they turn this into Luis Robert, who has a lot of possibilities. And I do want to say this. This tweet is from Sam Phelan, who covers the White Sox and was also on Survivor. That's how I know him. Luis Robert Jr. in a bad 2025 season. Here are some things you can like, even in his most recent season. Obviously, it's the 33 stolen bases, which I mentioned before. So if nothing else, the Mets got fast in center field. We like that. 842 OPS against left-handed pitching. Like that a lot. In a bad case scenario, Tyrone Taylor is a reverse splits hitter. You play him against righties. You play Luis Robert against lefties. If he's that bad against righties, suddenly you have a pretty solid platoon out in center field. That's an option. 7 outs above average in center field, 93rd percentile. That is one of the best marks defensively of any player who's playing center field on a day-to-day basis. For reference, Tyrone Taylor, who made some really good plays in center field last year, was 84th percentile, plus 3 outs above average, in a pretty similar sample size of playing time. So, defensive upgrade, athleticism upgrade on the base paths, and who knows what that bat is truly capable of. The Mets lineup now, I said this in a tweet, it is absolute pure chaos. It is so different. This clubhouse is so different than the way it was last year. Lindor leads off, plays shortstop. Soto plays right field, bats second. Bo Bichette bats third, plays third base. I think he might DH. Who knows? That is such a nice top 3. Obviously, I understand if you're a Mets fan, you're saying, why did you not just sign Pete Alonso? I get it. There is a very clear, legitimate argument that this offseason could have been complete by now, especially offensively, if you just signed Pete instead of having Jorge Polanco bat fourth. And you know what? I understand it. I sympathize. I get it. In a perfect world, Pete's batting fourth in this lineup playing first base, and I'm talking about this is a World Series lineup. Instead, it's switch hitting Jorge Polanco, who had a really nice year last year playing first base. We'll see about the defense. I don't know. Like I said, pure chaos is this lineup. Batting fifth, Brett Beatty. I have him at third base, not really DHing. I have Bo Bichette DHing for a year. I don't really see the harm in that. Sixth, Francisco Alvarez, who the second half Francisco Alvarez that we saw, that could be the real deal. Mind you, Francisco Alvarez is going to be 24 this season. I got to believe that he's going to get better. He's still so young. So young, guys. Like, really? Batting seventh, Marcus Semien. Go look at his numbers in the last 2 months when he was finally healthy again. You can dream on that a little bit. Batting eighth in the lineup is Luis Robert. Let me do a quick search because I got to imagine, one, I don't think he batted eighth a single time for the White Sox last year because he's one of the better bats in that lineup. Yeah, Luis Robert was batting second, third, fourth, and fifth for the majority of last season. He's batting eighth in this lineup. There's no pressure on him to be this offensive powerhouse. He can go be a center field glove. We'll see what we get. If he's a league average bat, he's a 3-WAR player. The Mets could greatly use that in this lineup. And then batting ninth, Carson Bench, who is the rookie that they're very excited about, fast riser, made it to AAA last year, hit well, might make the opening day roster if the Mets aren't truly involved in the Bellinger sweepstakes beyond their short-term high AAV offer. I also want to read this about Luis Robert. This is from Scott Merkin, who's the MLB.com White Sox beat writer. So he's essentially their Anthony DiComo, covers the team, travels with them, all of that. In a quote, he said, Robert is a tireless worker, a supremely talented player, and a really solid fit in the White Sox clubhouse. That last part matters to me because clubhouse dynamic is very much a thing with the Mets, especially the 2025 Mets, their storyline of their decline, all that. Clubhouse was the term that constantly got floated. So any guy that's revered as a clubhouse guy, like Marcus Semien, like Bo Bichette, like Luis Robert, apparently, I'm welcoming in with open arms. He also said he also handled a year and a half of trade rumors about as well as anyone could be expected to. That makes sense to me as well. If you were constantly floated in trade rumors for 15 months more, I bet you it would affect you as well, especially your play on the field. His issue is staying healthy, which he has discussed. If he does, he'll thrive. And I think that's really the only risk in this trade. If Luis Robert gets hurt, which, you know what, man, you could play that with Any guy in baseball, especially guys that are a little bit on the older side. And Robert's going to be 28 this year, so I wouldn't count him being on the older side. That's really the only drawback I see in this. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the bat decline in the last 2 years. And you know what? I think this is worth discussing as well. It's definitely dumb sports fan stuff for sure, but I think it's worth talking about. I have to imagine that Luis Robert was phoning it in and not playing maybe to his 100% capability because of the performance of the White Sox. Because if you're on the White Sox and you're not like fighting tooth and nail to like make your name in this league, like guys like maybe Chase Mydroth on the White Sox were and stuff like that, I got to imagine that it really just affects the effort you put in on a day-to-day basis. I don't know. I can't say that for certain. That's why it's dumb sports fan stuff. But if you're Luis Robert and you get traded to a team that employs Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor, 2 future Hall of Famers, and is actively spending money every offseason to try and compete and win a World Series, I have to imagine that will result in an uptick in your play. I can't say it for certain. I don't know. Here's what I can say for certain. July 11th to July 30th last year. So let's say that that's the 3 weeks where the trade deadline is at its hottest for rumors. And we were seeing Luis Robert's name floated on Twitter and social media linked to the Mets pretty much every day in this window. That means Luis Robert was seeing those trade rumors as well. And I think a lot of people thought he was getting traded this past midseason. July 11th to July 30th. His numbers in this window, 13 games, 53 plate appearances. He batted .370, a .453 on base, and an OPS over 1,000. I don't think it's naive to suggest that Luis Robert felt like he might get traded and locked in a little bit, started playing his best baseball of the entire season. Because right after he didn't get traded, his numbers, they didn't fully regress, but they were not nearly as on fire as they were in the 3 weeks leading up to the trade deadline. So I think if you want to play that theory of a change of scenery can definitely work for this guy, use those numbers right before the trade deadline. He felt like he might be on a new team, and suddenly he was playing his best ball of the season, especially on the offensive side. So overall, I'm excited, man. I mean, the Mets, if nothing else, they have exciting off seasons year in and year out, and this is one of the most exciting in years. I mean, you think about the 2022 off season where everyone got re-locked up and they signed Justin Verlander to pair with Max Scherzer and all that. It was a very exciting time. The parts in, parts out of this offseason really contends with that as well. So, I mean, parts in, you have Bo Bichette, Jorge Polanco, Devin Williams, Luke Weaver, Marcus Semien, Luis Robert. That is 7 new bodies, 6 new bodies. I can't count, but a lot of change in this clubhouse. Parts out is even more. Pete Alonso, Edwin Diaz, Tyler Rogers, Cedric Mullins, Ryan Helsley, Gregory Soto, Ryan Stanek, Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo, Luisangel Acuna. A lot of bodies in and out. So I have to believe this is going to be a net positive for the Mets clubhouse, which again was linked to so much of their collapse and decline in the second half of 2025. If nothing else, that part of it makes me excited because I got attached as a fan to Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo, but it's very clear that this team needed some sort of change. And they're getting more athletic. They're getting faster. They're getting stronger. They're getting a little bit more injury prone. I think that's fair to say as well. But they're getting just a lot different from the team you saw last year. And listen, the team you saw last year in the first half was one of the most fun Mets teams I watched, but they did not stick the landing at all. They were a bottom 3 team in baseball for the last 3.5 months. Things needed to change. Say what you will about David Stearns. I think he's done a lot right and wrong in his Mets tenure so far, but he's doing a lot. He understood the writing on the wall. He understood that the Mets missing the playoffs gave him an opportunity to make changes that he saw fit, an opportunity he didn't get in 2024 when the team started winning so much in the midsummer, and he had to go buy the deadline instead of sell like he probably wanted to. I have some other notes from Dalton Feely, our amazing researcher here at John Boy Media. Let's see. So let's feed into the good and bad of this. Let's see. There's a lot of high aggressiveness in Luis Robert's offensive profile here. 20% of Luis Robert's plate appearances lasted only 1 pitch in the 2025 season. Second highest in MLB among hitters with at least 245 total plate appearances, which is alarming. I will contend that. How many Mets games did we watch last year where Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso, any guy in the lineup really, not to just hammer those guys, How many times did we see a plate appearance where a guy took a fastball right down the middle? If you watched it all 162, like I assume most of you did because we're all crazy here, that means you saw that a lot. There was a frustrating amount of passiveness, I think, in the Mets lineup because a lot of the guys in their lineup had a similar offensive archetype. They're looking for the home run ball, but they're also disciplined hitters. They get on base. The Mets had one of the highest on-base rates of any lineup last year. And at times, it felt like that offensive approach stunted rallies and stunted late inning comebacks. The Mets had no comebacks when they were tied or trailing in the ninth inning last year. That was the stat that got run around a ton. And in the late season, when one of those wins, I always think about that game against the Nationals, Brandon Nimmo against Jose Ferrer. If they had just one of those wins, they would have been in the playoffs. So maybe the Mets need a little bit of aggressiveness in this lineup. Luis Robert definitely brings that. He had an OPS of just 601 against righties last year, which makes sense because his OPS against lefties, like I mentioned before, was very high. So again, worst case scenario, you can play Tyrone against the righties. Tyrone for his career, I'll pull up the number just so I have it said here as I typed in Tyrone and not Tyrone Taylor into Baseball Reference, so it didn't give me anything. Thanks a lot. First righties for his career, 707 OPS. First lefties, 690. Last year in 2025, if you even want just the recent results, versus righties, 617. But versus lefties, 553. So he is better against righties. It's just the bat wasn't really there for Tyrone last year. I don't know. I definitely want you guys to leave a comment down below to let me know what you think. I've seen a lot of divisive opinions on the Luis Robert trade topic, but I just don't really see the high risk. I would have liked to talk to Jerry about it because I think Jerry was a little bit more bearish on Luis Robert going into the season because there was, potential effort problems and stuff like that. And the decline is there. You can see it with Luis Robert and his numbers, but part of me just loves tools and raw skill set and raw talent. And Luis Robert has a lot of that. And you go back, do yourself a favor. Tell you what, do yourself a favor. If you're a Mets fan that's not super into this move, or you're saying, why aren't they going after pitching? Why are they doing this? Why are they training Luisangel Acuna? He's got Acuna as his last name. He has to be good. If you're one of those Mets fans feeling that way right now, just go on your laptop, go to YouTube, type in Luis Robert 2023 highlights, and just watch. Because it's very fun to watch. It's very exciting. That's all I really have to say on that. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this trade. I'm dying to hear what you guys think. Hopefully I did a good enough job recapping everything. Before I go, quick little piece of extra news at the bottom here, because we do have it. Congrats to Carlos Beltran on getting into the Hall of Fame. Much deserved. On the topic of center fielders who are great, and we want Luis Robert to be great, Carlos Beltran was great. He was a terrific Met. Hopefully he wears the Mets cap when he gets inducted. I was surprised to hear that he has not committed to wearing a Mets hat because I think his Mets era is the best of his career. But on the career, 435 home runs, 2,700 hits, 70 WAR. I mean, this is a Hall of Famer. And it's cool that he played for the Mets for 7 years. It's cool that that's right in the middle of his prime. From age 28 to age 34, he wore the blue and orange. He won Gold Gloves, Silver Sluggers. I know a lot of people remember the curveball as the only thing, but Carlos Beltran did a lot for this team otherwise. And it was cool to watch him play on a day-to-day basis when I first started watching the team. So to see him get into the Hall on, I believe, what was his 4th year, I would even call that overdue for him, honestly, but there were crowded ballots before it. I'm really excited that he's getting in and he gets to, represent the Mets kind of when he goes into the Hall of Fame, like others before him. Just wanted to shout that out. Andruw Jones also got in. He was very deserving as well. So 2 center fielders get into the Hall of Fame, and the Mets find their center fielder, hopefully for the next 2 years if things go well, on that same day. So pretty cool. I like it though, and I think there's more moves to come. I think this is the pivot from Kyle Tucker, or I guess missing Kyle Tucker. The Mets are making a flurry of moves, but let's get some pitching going, okay? Don't let this move make you believe that the Mets are just not going to address pitching. But I am getting worried that it's January 21st and the pitching staff is the same. I think you're valid if you're a Mets fan and you're criticizing the front office for not changing a thing. I think the pitching market is just a little bit more complicated, but Framber Valdez is out there and there's no rumors linked to him. See what you can do there. Is the trade happening? Like, is it Freddie Peralta? Is it Tarek Skubal? I have no idea. Please don't trade Brett Beatty, though. I just think that's a bad idea. I don't know. We'll see. But I think more moves are coming. More pods are coming as well. So if you enjoyed this pod, subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. If you were listening on a podcast app, leave us a rating or a review. I'd really appreciate it. It helps us out a lot. Helps us find new audience so we can build the Shea Station fan base even more. Appreciate you guys. LFGM. I'll see you when there's more news to talk about. Till then.